Hey guys, what's up? This is the Man vs. Wheelchair podcast, where we talk about shortcuts, secrets, and truths we wish we knew 20 years ago about being disabled. Together, let's take over your disability with a winning mindset and learn to live life the way you want.
Hey everybody, this is Isaac here with Man vs. Wheelchair.
And this is Joshua.
And today we have a very special treat. We are actually on the line right now with a guy that I've been following for a couple of years. He's a very, very wonderful inspiration to the disabled community, and we're really excited to have him, Mr. Kevan Chandler. Yay!
Yay!
Welcome. Thank you for being with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Cool. Hey, just to get things going, could you go ahead and just give like a quick about me? You don't necessarily have to go, like disability wise, but just like kind of introduce yourself if you would, and what you're into and what you're all about.
Sure. So I live up in Indiana with a couple of friends, and about 2 years ago, we decided that we wanted to explore Europe, and that was going to be a little difficult because I'm in a wheelchair, and the things we wanted to do were like mountain climbing and, going to cities that we knew were not necessarily accessible. So we came up with a backpack kind of design that my friends could carry me in, and we left my wheelchair behind and spent 3 weeks exploring Europe, and they just carried me through the whole thing. And that was 2 years ago, so now we do a lot of speaking about that. We made a documentary, and I've written a book that's not out yet, but we're kind of carrying those things through as we speak and share our story and work alongside others to kind of redefine accessibility as being people helping people and getting creative with changing your situation. The world is not always accessible, but with the help of others, you can maybe make it so. So that's what we've been doing for about 2 years. Besides doing that, I hang out at a coffee shop back home and write stories and play backgammon and watch movies and do all the normal stuff. So
awesome. So you designed the backpack?
So we started with a company called Deuter. They have like a toddler carrier kind of thing, and we used that as our base, and then worked up from there. So we had to redesign the seat to distribute weight better, and there were a few other things about it that we had to work on to give more security and stability for me as well as the carriers. So I actually worked with the guys that went with me to Europe. We worked on it for about 4 months before we left. And my dad's an airplane mechanic, so he is kind of a MacGyver. He can fix and make anything. So he was involved as well. And we just kind of threw this thing together and made it work for the trip, and we had a backup with us just in case. But now we're working with that same company to make a more professional, more durable version of what we had.
Wow, what was that like, just leaving the wheelchair behind?
Yeah, like that moment. I think I read on your website, like you left it in the airport in Atlanta.
Yeah, in Atlanta. And so we stayed the night in Atlanta the night before at a hotel right by the airport, and then just took a shuttle over to the airport. So we left my chair, I guess technically at the hotel in my van, but it's just easier to say it was at the airport.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the process of like getting out of my chair, getting in the backpack, and getting on the shuttle, it was all kind of quick, and so I didn't really think about it at the moment. There wasn't this big revelation of, this is the moment, stepping out into the great unknown. It was just like, oh, we got to catch this bus, jumped on. So also, like I said, the past 4 months before that, we had been working on the backpack, which meant I spent a lot of time in it, testing it out. So it didn't really feel any different from any other time. The the moment that it really hit me was about a week into the trip. I noticed that I was getting kind of um, like on edge and kind of annoyed with people, and which is not normal for me, and especially these guys. They're some of my best friends, and just an amazing group. And so I started evaluating why I was feeling this way, and I realized it was because um, without thinking, I had traded one freedom for another in the sense that now with these guys carrying me, I could literally go anywhere, but it was a conversation. It was with them. It was, kind of at their mercy, if you will. Whereas, when I'm in my wheelchair, I can't go everywhere per se, but I can do that on my own. The places I can go, and I can wander off and kind of do as I please. So I realized that I had given up one for the other. Not that one is better than the other. I found we were wandering through London, and I was like, oh, I would kind of like to go that way on my own, and everyone
Right.
else wants to go this way. So yeah, that was the moment when I really it set in, like, oh, you're without your wheelchair, and you have another 2 weeks to go. And that was also the moment where I was like, oh, I really need to get over myself and and enjoy this experience that we're having
Right.
together. Otherwise, I'll miss out. And so, yeah, I'm glad I had that moment when I did, and just worked through it with the help of the other guys, and we kept going and had an awesome time.
Man, that's amazing. What's with
Check.
being able to put that type of trust on someone to carry you on their back? What's that dynamic like with your friends? I mean, is and to even go a step further, like what is that group's dynamic like? Like your friends. I mean, obviously they love you and they care about you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. But what's that relationship like? As far as like, man, whatever you need, wherever you want to go, because you said that it was getting a little frustrating. Did you work that out eventually, or did you just kind of, I guess, humble yourself and say wherever they go, they go?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a humbling process on both ends. So there were times when, there were parts where they had to say, "All right, what do you want to do?" And there were parts where I had to say, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And
Right.
I mean, it's just like any group of friends going anywhere. You decide together what you're going to do, and because ultimately you'd rather be together than doing something else on your own. And so,
Absolutely.
so that's definitely where that conversation went and that dynamic. And I think it was just something that I had to come to understand because I was, attached to them. I didn't really have a choice in where I went in that regard, but they were so gracious and yeah, kind in the whole process. And there were even, there were some days where we had kind of a loose itinerary of things specifically that we wanted to do. And then there were things that we had talked about that they said, okay, Kevan wants to see this specifically. It doesn't really mean much to us, but because he cares about it, we're going to do it. And it proved to be really special for everyone. In that case. And there were a few days like that, but there were also things that we all wanted to see. And then there were other things that the other guys wanted to do, and I was happy to go along with that because after all, they were doing so much for me. So I think that translates into everyday life back home, and other trips that we take. I think kind of as a side note, people with disabilities can, when they're trying to decide how they would travel, you can kind of look at your everyday life and translate that into it and say, okay, well, how do I interact with people at home? Well, it's going to be the same thing. It's just a different place and a different situation in some regards. But you still need help, and you still have people that you know helping you. And so yeah, just kind of a process that we all have to go through in that regard. But at home, for me, I've got about a dozen guys. Well, so I have 2 roommates that I live with, and then about a dozen other guys that come in throughout the week and help out, just on a volunteer basis, which is really awesome and just further shows and reminds me how much I'm loved by them.
Yeah.
So that's a constant encouragement every morning and every night. So,
Cool.
but even with that, there's stuff that comes up. Someone has an exam or something comes up at work, or someone's family needs them, and I have to be willing to give a bit on my end and say, okay, well, let me find somebody else for that day, and vice versa. If someone else has something come up, one of the other guys is happy to step in, and so it's a shifting thing, and we just kind of figure it out every day, by all of us giving a little bit of ourselves, and saying, well, ultimately, it's about taking care of everyone else. So I have to look out for them, and they look out for me, and it works out.
That's a wonderful that's a wonderful mindset of being able to put yourself to where you are taking care of someone else, even though you are completely reliant upon someone taking care of you. That really helps. Well, it does with me anyways, in feeling it boosts my I guess what would that be? My need to be needed, if that makes sense. And to be appreciated and to be relevant. And Josh and I talk about what's your value, and one thing that we try to help show people is that you have such amazing value, and it's not dependent on your disability at all. It's dependent on your views of life, on your views of how you view yourself, how you treat others, and how humble you can be. And the more that you can understand other people are here to help you, and they do it because they want to. You're not going to get people like your friends that willingly just come over and do it voluntarily if they don't care about you and if they're not invested in you. And that's because you are of value to them, that even just in friendship wise, but in other areas. And that's one thing that we try to tell people is that, do your best to grow your value so that way other people can invest in you and you can invest in them.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it definitely requires you to think outside of yourself, and I think sometimes with a disability, it's easy to be pretty self-centered because you have actual practical needs that need to be fulfilled.
Exactly.
It's like, well, I'm really hungry and I need someone to make this food, or I have to use the restroom, and no one's going to fault you for actually needing that, and so, I think in some ways, sometimes society gives us a pass on being selfish, and so we have to just realize it ourselves of, hey, I need to put others first and think about them and really look out for them and care for them. So
yeah. I think that was important that you mentioned you kind of realized that in the middle of your trip, and it's like you surround yourself with like the good people. You have to have like supportive friends and family around you to to do things that, you were able to do. And without those people, you wouldn't have been able to do those things. But those people come around with you being, more selfless and adding something to them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, one thing that I would love to get your perspective on is, was there a moment in your life where you said, this disability thing it's just whatever. I want to move on. I want to get over this. I want to go experience the world? Or was that something that was just kind of ingrained in you from the beginning?
Yeah, I would say that it's always been the case. I mean, we all have kind of hard days, where you start to rethink it. But for the most part, I think it's always been, like you said, ingrained. I have really amazing parents who, this idea of just waking up and saying, well, what do I want to do and what can I do, and finding something in the middle and pushing myself and thinking outside the box. I mean, that all comes straight from them, and that's who they were before my siblings and I came along, and that's who they're going to continue to be. And so they definitely fostered that in me. I have an older sister who also has SMA, and so we've always had each other to encourage each other and think through things. But also, I mean, I have a relationship with the Lord, which is really where my identity is, and so that kind of overarches all of it. Where it's like, I have a disability. I'm not perfect, but no one is, and I have this promise that there's something better and something bigger than me that defines who I am, besides the fact that my legs don't work. So that has always been kind of the catalyst of what has carried me through that.
Right. That's awesome, because I love with you. I love that my identity comes first and foremost through my faith and not through like my disability. Like I don't want to be identified, although I am a lot of times. But I want to be identified as Isaac, the person, as Isaac, hopefully a faithful servant of the Lord. And then like 7 or 8 chapters later, oh yeah, by the way, Isaac has a disability.
Yeah.
Is that something that you experience, of people kind of automatically identifying you with the disability instead of your personality? Has that ever been something that you've encountered?
I think it's always kind of in the background. You have some people who can't get past that, and then you have other people who can. Other people who might get past it a little too fast, and like, no, I still, I still need this or that. But yeah, I think part of it for me, my parents kind of raised me in the able-bodied community, but still having my sister around, I kind of feel like I understood both sides of the story. And so with that, kind of going into a room, going into communities, I've always kind of put myself out there in a way that my disability is not up front. So just putting my personality out there first. And also, going back to the friends that I have, just surrounding myself with people that do see past that and see me for who I am. And so if I have them with me, that influences the rest of, the people around us, the rest of the room. An example I could give is when I'm in the backpack, kind of as an extreme example, when I'm in the backpack and I'm being carried around, I mean, that's a very weird sight to see.
Right.
that's not normal for anyone, including myself. And
Yeah.
and yet, when you have me and six other guys walk into a room and treat it like normal, I mean, sure, the rest of the room might look for, a moment. They might stare for a second, but the normalcy that the rest of the group provides kind of permeates the room, and in no time, everyone's okay with it. There was a restaurant we went to while we were in England, and it was one of our hosts took us there, and it was like this really fancy, like 5-star restaurant, and so we come in, and I'm in the backpack, and so we have to kind of fumble around and put some chairs together and figure out how to set my backpack, so I'm at the table and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And these like really well-dressed, well-to-do people at the table behind us like got up and started helping us with it.
Oh, wow.
And without like a second thought. And I just thought that was so cool. And I still don't know who they were, but I wonder if how much of that was because, you had Tom and Ben and Philip and Robbie and all these guys with me who kind of just did it naturally. And so everyone else saw that and were like, oh, yeah, this is normal. So just being proactive and surrounding myself with those people, and hopefully that affects others as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What advice would you give to someone who is, and I don't always like to just narrow it down to someone with a disability, but just anyone that is struggling as far as coming out of that struggle and facing the world. I mean, it's a brave thing to get thrown up on the shoulders of some guys and go walking around the world. That's very brave. What advice would you give to start that process of coming out of your shell and going for it?
Yeah. Well, so when I'm in the backpack and being carried by these guys, there's one guy in particular named Tom, who is kind of the instigator. He's the one that gets us into the most trouble, but it makes for the best stories. And what I've realized is people, I don't know, people seem to think that I'm this really adventurous, exciting, courageous person. I'm like, I'm good with sitting at home and reading a book for a bit, but, if you want to go skydiving, okay. But, but I don't like go out and seek that, whereas Tom does. So when I'm on his back, it's really interesting because I've realized that I don't need to be all that courageous. I just need to have a moment of courage to say yes. Mm-hmm. And so when he's like, hey, let's climb up this ladder and, onto this. We were at a church a while back, and it was this big church, and they were like, we want to, do you guys want to go up to the catwalk? We want to show you that, like above everything. And all I needed to say was, okay. And then, Tom took over from there, and I was on his back going, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea, but we were already halfway up the ladder, And so with that, I would say to people that are, struggling with whatever it may be, if it's depression or some sort of physical disability or some other thing, even just a social thing, you just need a moment of courage to take that first step and see what happens from there. And if that first step is to surround yourself with the right people, then the second step is even easier. And so I think that's the thing, is having support around you, and then having just a split second of courage to say yes is the start of really great things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it all kind of comes down to momentum, right? Like once you start doing like more adventurous things, you just start doing more and more and getting more and more comfortable with getting outside of your comfort zone and doing new things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, an adventure could be just, crossing your street to get an ice cream, or
Yeah.
going downtown to hang out with people or whatever it may be. Or it could be, traveling the world, but it all looks the same in that it starts with just saying yes and going for it. Taking that first step out your door.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's true. You know what I was wondering is you mentioned that there are 4 or 5 different people that help carry you around.
Mm. Yeah, actually, the group is growing. So when we went to Europe, we had 4 guys, and then 2 cameramen, and now we're going to China in August, and we're going to have 5 carriers, and then a few other people helping out with like translation and
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of stuff that you need in China, and
Right.
and then while I'm home, I've got other guys who help out at the house, but then some other guys that help carry whenever we want to go, you know, hiking or traveling or whatever. So I've kind of lost count of who all we have,
Yeah.
but it's a cool group of guys, and it's fun to see it always growing, kind of because of that. Um, how they set the pace, and other people see us doing it and they're like, oh, I want to try it out, I want to help out, and so that's kind of where we are, and we're excited to, kind of as a side note, to when people are saying, hey, I want to help out, say, great, let's find other people for you to help,
Yeah.
and just spreading that out more.
That's really cool. You're kind of building like a community based on helping everybody out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So one of the questions that I was really curious about is whenever you're being carried by different people, do you feel like your experiences change? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, whenever, one person is carrying you that has, like, that's more outgoing or something like that, is it like faster pace, or is it all pretty much the same because you're all doing the same thing?
Oh yeah, I've definitely on the physical side, I've learned that people walk very different ways. So you have like people that loaf around and people that speed walk, and
Uh-huh.
you just have people that lumber and people that grew up in marching bands, so they're super smooth. And, but also I've realized that whoever's carrying me, we kind of take on each other's perspectives and personalities.
Yeah.
And we not only does the world see us as one person, but we kind of see the world as one person. So it's definitely different depending on the person. There are some people I enjoy being carried by more than others,
Mm-hmm.
and some people that I'm like, well, that was fun. Let's never do it again. And
I
so.
like the way you put that.
So when we were in France, the day that I was so grumpy, I really wanted to get off on my own just to kind of start processing this stuff and why I was feeling this way. And so one of the guys on the trip, Ben, is my roommate back in Indiana. And so we spend all of our time together. And so we're kind of used to being around each other, but not doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
like how you do with your best friends or your roommates. So I asked him, I said, do you mind? I need to be by myself for a while. Do you mind carrying me and we just go off on our own? Because that's the closest I'm going to get, on this trip.
Yeah.
And so he was really great in doing that. And he was like, so, like, you don't want to talk right now? I was like, no, not really. Do you mind if we just go for a walk? And so we did that. And so, having a friend like that I can just, I don't know, we just clicked in that way. That's one example. And then there was another guy while we were in London. My friend Philip wanted to go to the British Museum, I think it was, and so I don't know. I don't think we planned on this, but I ended up being on his back while we were at the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool because I never planned to go to the museum myself. It was, again, one of those examples of, well, this is something he wants to do, so we'll do it. But being on his back, I enjoyed it all the more because his excitement for it was, contagious, and I picked up on it. And as we walked around, he would start talking about different artifacts and stuff. And he's a history teacher, and so he was just, in his element. He was so excited. And as a result, I was so excited too. And it was such a rich experience to have together. So it definitely changes person by person. With Tom, yeah, I'm always up for doing crazy things, and he just knows how to talk me into it. So, yeah, it's a different experience every time, and it's been kind of cool.
That's cool. Like you get to, I feel like you get to experience like I don't know, you get to experience the people as well. Like you're not just stuck in. I wouldn't say stuck, but you're not just like by yourself there. And, like you said with the museum, he was excited for it, so it made you excited. Like that's really cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And I mean, it's even in the case with my roommate. I mean, it's always a communal experience, an experience that I'm having with someone else, and so. I think when you're doing stuff with other people, it always enriches it. And,
Yeah.
so it makes it great. Yeah.
One
But
thing I wanted to kind of make sure we got in here would be like uh what advice or what tips do you have for people who want to travel who are disabled and in my head I was not thinking necessarily the accessibility part but like in order to stay healthy or not to get sick whenever you're traveling and you're not on your
Mm.
routine.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say something I've learned is whatever the pace is for a normal, like able-bodied person, just slow it down.
yeah,
I mean, you
right.
guys know that, and I think there are two other things. One is, when you're traveling, you're, running on adrenaline.
Hmm.
You're excited about what you're doing. You know, you still have to slow down, and you still have to make yourself rest. You still have to make yourself eat healthy and
Hmm.
make good decisions. Fortunately, the guys that I have with me help me with, making those decisions and keeping me on track with being healthy as best as we can. And there was another point, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, yeah. So I would also say just for me, the most difficult part physically is the point A to point B travel.
Mm.
And so, you know, when you do that point A to point B, and I mean, everyone's different, but generally speaking, I would say, um, you have an itinerary when you get there and throughout your time, but make sure that the itinerary is uh, loose enough that if you get there and you're like, I need a break, you can take that break. You're not
Sure.
like, oh, but we have this to do. We bought these tickets. We have this appointment. Just give yourself a lot of leeway and a lot of grace in how you do things. And so,
Cool.
yeah, that would be it.
Can I get you to give me your craziest story that's happened? Whether it be, tripping and falling or just like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. I want through your travels with your friends, what's the one thing that absolutely stands out the most?
Oh man. Well, we haven't tripped and fallen yet. That's good.
Well, that's good.
And oh man, I'm trying to think of the craziest. I mean, it's all just so much fun. Man. So this is, I don't know if this is the absolute craziest, but it's pretty high up there. A few months ago, we were out in California working on some stuff, doing some speaking, and one day we had some free time, so we went out to the beach, and I was on Tom's back, which is normally how the crazy stories start. And we were walking along, and the water was, rushing up onto his feet. And he said, Kevin, as your friend and as your carrier, I think it's my moral obligation to get you out into the water. And so we started walking. Because I in that moment I said, okay, why not? So we started walking out into the tide, and we got to where probably the water was like up to his knees, and the waves would, barely hit my feet, which are about at his waist. And he said, how you doing? And I thought that meant, well, if I'm doing well, then we can go back. And so I said, oh, I'm doing great. And he said, cool, I'm going to keep going. So we ended up about waist deep in the tide, and the waves were crashing up, and it was a cool experience. But after a few minutes, it was pretty cold, so we walked back in, or back to shore. And as we got out there, there was is it a parasurfer? I think it was like right around where we had just been. And he like jumped off his board and let the wind pull him in to shore, and ran up to us and was like, did you guys not realize that like there were sharks like right around where you were?
No way.
Oh, okay, cool. So we survived that. I guess we'll see what happens next. So that's probably one of the crazier things. Nothing too dramatic happened in the moment, but afterwards you realize what was going on underneath. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, how can people learn more about you? What are some places that they can go and visit to keep up to date with you?
So you can go to wecarrykevan.com. And through that you can link to our Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and we also have a GoFundMe going for the China trip. So if you go to wecarrykevan.com, there's a link for it at the top, and I think at the bottom, and in a few other places. So tried to make it as easy to find as possible. So yeah, just wecarrykevan.com, and that'll take you everywhere. So.
Man, well, thank you so much for letting us interview you, and it was such a blessing to be able to meet you, and we just hope that you have continued success in all that you do, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode, and take care. If you guys want to hear more, go ahead and go to manversuswheelchair.com, and make sure to go to manversuswheelchair.club to sign up for our newsletters and extra content.
Thanks for listening to the Man vs. Wheelchair podcast. If you guys got this far, that's amazing, and I hope you got some value, and I want you to do one more thing for me. Go to manversuswheelchair.com and sign up to join the club. That's where we're going to give you exclusive content and more tips on how to level up in life. So go to that right now. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hit that follow button.